All right, let's talk a little bit about the confidence level, and then we'll look at an example from the homework. So keep in mind how these things work, how these confidence intervals work. All right, we take one poll, one survey, we get one data point. That's our result. And we sometimes call that the point estimate. And then we say, well, what are the worst case scenarios, right? Samples vary. And one of the worst cases is that all the rest of the samples look like this, and the real population value, the true value, is up here. And the other worst case scenario is that our sample really came from the upper end of the curve, and that the real value is here. And then we go and we say there to there, centered on the point estimate, that's our confidence interval. And one of these arrows, one of these red arrows I've drawn in either direction, let's see, where can I label this? One of those is the margin of error. And I did say in the previous video that we're going to assume that it's not over here, because our sample would have had to be like 1 in a million if the green curve was right. It'd be so far off the green curve. So we're assuming that's not the case. But really we want to say, what's the difference between a red curve and a green curve? And the way I've drawn them right now, it seems pretty obvious, but where's the breaking point between what we consider to be too crazy and not too crazy? And that break point is usually to say the outside 5%, what we consider unusual. So that typically means for a confidence interval, we're covering the middle 95%. Oops, that's supposed to say of the curve. So a confidence interval, maybe we say, let's assume our sample is not in the outside 5%, so it's covering the other 95% of the curve. Sometimes if we want to be a little more confident that our interval really is right, we'll spread it out a little bit and we'll say, hey, let's cover 99% of all possibilities. We're a little more confident that the result that we get, that the true value is in there somewhere. Of course, it's wider, it's less specific, right? So maybe it's less helpful. Students sometimes say, why don't you just do 100% confidence? And I say, we absolutely can do 100% confidence. 100% confidence interval will say, hey, the true value is somewhere between 0% and 100%. And I'm absolutely certain that's right. And you are absolutely certain that's right. It's just also not useful. So we try to get this balance between percentage of being right and actually being useful. So usually that ends up being somewhere around 95% or 99%. The problem has to tell you what confidence level to use. If they don't, 95% is the default. So if they don't say otherwise, 95% confidence level. Okay, so let's take a look at a homework problem now. Let's maybe go ahead and look at number 24. It's similar to other ones that you'll be doing on the homework. Okay, so 24, and again, this is real. Anytime they cite their source here, this is real information. So if somebody took a poll of 514 HR people, and of those 514, 90% of them said that appearance is the most important thing in making a good first impression. Okay, so part A just says among the 514, how many of them said that? So we need to know that before we start crunching our numbers. So this is not a confidence interval question. It's just out of those 514, how many of them actually said appearance was the most important thing? 90% of them, but how many of them? So that's where you need a calculator. And you say 0.9 times 514, which is 462.6. We can't have half an HR professional, so we'll go 463. So I'll say 463 to the nearest whole number. Okay, so part B then says construct a 99% confidence interval. Okay, so we're going to go a little wider. We're going to cover a little bit more of the curve. Construct 99% confidence interval. Estimate for the proportion of all human resources professionals believing appearance is the most important thing. Okay, so 99% confidence interval with 463 out of 514. So let's get status going here. The confidence level that they specified was 99 rather than 95. And the sample size was 514. So 514. And here's why we needed to do part A, because now number of successes. That was 463. So 463 of them said that. So yeah, so we've got a margin of error of about 3%, but really for us, I think the important part here is, this is the way we usually express it, is just saying it's somewhere between 0.86681 and 0.93474. So 0.86681 and let's see, and 0.93474. So roughly 87% to 93%-ish. Let's do part C, which just says repeat it with a confidence level of 80. Before we do this, let's think about part D. Part D says which one's going to be wider? The 99% confidence level or the 80% confidence level? And just keep in mind, with 99% confidence, we're covering 99% of the curve. 80%, we're only covering 80% of the curve. Or another way to say it is, if we want to be more confident that this interval is right, we need to spread it out, make it cover more possibilities. So either way, the interval from part B should be wider, and part C should be less wide. So let's go ahead and do this 80% confidence interval. Same numbers, we're just going to only cover 80%. And notice now we're going like 88% to 92%. So it is a little bit tighter interval than our previous one. But we're taking more of a risk that it's wrong and that the real value is not in there. We're only now 80% confident that these numbers contain the true value. So 0.88388, I should be able to remember that. Up to 0.91768. Okay, so, and we basically already answered part D. We said the part B answer is wider. It goes like 87% to 94%, and this one's narrower. It goes like 88% to only 92%. And it's wider because it's covering more of the curve. It's giving us higher confidence that it's correct. They didn't specifically ask for a sentence here, but it's really good practice to write a sentence anyway. So let me just write a sentence for part B. And we'd say something like, the true percent of human resources professionals let's say appearance is the most important factor. In a good first impression. Isn't necessarily 90%, but it's somewhere between, let's see, if a good first impression is between, and here again is the point where it's fine to round to say 80 is between 87% and 93%. I am going to ask you to write a sentence on the test when that rolls around. And it's really important to me that your sentence is a good standalone sentence. In other words, a person should not have to read the problem to know what you're talking about. So if you just write the true percentage is between 87 and 93%, I will say the true percentage of what? I don't get it. And so you'll say, oh, the true percentage of human resources professionals that say that appearance is the most important factor in a good first impression, right? So tell me what it's about. Is between 87 and 93%. Okay, I think you're ready to tackle the homework. But as always, if you have questions, send them to me. I'd be happy to answer them by email or just make another video for everybody because you probably won't be the only person that has that question.